Guys, Stunts here, also known as Alpha 5 with the Rangers Dojo, and I'm coming to you with another deck profile. This one is our Light, Nature, Water, Dark Haven Control list. This is our own design. We were heavily inspired by a lot of the Haven Control lists of the past, specifically the 4-color ones. Um, and there's a lot of fun texts here from different eras of the game. So let's get into it. First, I split up the board a little bit different here because I can talk about things in terms of packages instead of just curve. Because control decks are a little bit more specific in terms of different cards have very, very specific uses as opposed to aggro or tempo decks or mid-range decks that, the card hits face or the card supplements hitting face, and they're kind of simpler that way. So, here we got our blocker package. Everything here is a blocker. It supports Eternal Haven. It gives Haven things to tutor out of your hand. It tutors draws off of Panopter. Sometimes it can help draw, um, or it could help ramp us, and it just generally staves off early game aggression. So, 3 Aqua Strider, best 2-drop in the game, no cap. Um, Next, 3 Grudge Weaver. This, well, it's a weak blocker. It really makes, especially like the aggro and rush decks, think twice about attacking, almost more so than the Aqua Strider, because aggro and rush decks typically don't have a whole lot of draw. So if they any counter card that they do draw within turns 1 or 3 off just like normal drawing for turn, they need to hold it. So a Mesmerize or something to that extent is crippling. Um, Next, 3 Full Metal Lemon. One of the best 3-drops in the game. Incredible blocker. Ramps you further. Good colors, etc. 2 Bloom Warden. To me, this seemed like a little bit too cute. I love the card Bloom Warden, but I don't think it's good enough. Maybe they were just looking for more blockers. But I wasn't there when this deck was built. I joined the dojo after these decks were built. But regardless, this is another just really good 3-drop blocker. 3 is kind of a critical turn. Just stave off more aggression. Also fills out our curve a little bit nicer. I don't have a curve graphic here, but as you can see, this is a 54 card deck, so sometimes you just need a little bit more. Gloom Hollow, same idea as the Bloom Warden. Staves off that early game aggression. It's a 3-drop. Next, Panopter. This is the main draw engine of the deck. Play blockers, draw cards. Seems good. What more could he ask for? Next, Grandgur Tower Keeper. What is it? Grandgur Sky Guardian or something in Duel Masters. Um, Same stats as the DM version. 6 mana, 9,000 blocker. It's a great card. At least like in a slower meta, it's a great card because this will really just put the full stop on a lot of aggression, assuming your opponent doesn't have like a Blinder Beetle Prime or any way to stop interacting with this card. But if your opponent's playing a more or less fair game with just a lot of dudes attacking all at once, this thing will stop them in their tracks, which is a whole lot of fun. Um, Next, Saracon Storm Dynamo. I think this card was originally put in a control list. It was originally put in the uh, Esper, or if you're not familiar with Magic terminology, Light, Water, Dark Dragon control list by Jeradox Tater in uh, he was from Wisconsin. I'm trying to remember the actual name of the game shop. But regardless, he was the first one to play around with this. It stops dragon aggro a little bit. It's a little bit too late to stop a regular aggro deck, but it can make mid-range decks uncomfortable. And if it dies, it draws you closer to your Haven, and it's another big thing for Haven to pull out of the hand. So it's pretty good. Next, Twilight Archons. This is Lyra on a stick with blocker. This thing's super good. It has a lot of synergies with the spells in the deck. As you can see, there's quite a few spells in the deck, and it's another big thing to pull off of Haven. Um, Also, it can be removal in its own right. Like, this thing has got a lot of potent potential. Akeltique. Uh, this card is almost like a counter offense in a sense because it makes your opponent feel twice as bad for blocking. But it also can be a liability because it breaks shield. It doesn't destroy shields or send them just straight to the graveyard, which means that it can set off its own shield triggers. So your opponent's attacking, you block with this, Akeltique breaks 2 shields, and then your opponent hits 2 Terror Pits. Suddenly you're out 3 blockers because Akeltique just blocked and then 2 Terror Pits go off or something. So it can get a little bit weird. But it's another big thing that Haven can pull off. It makes your opponent feel bad. And if you're kind of turned the corner, this helps you clean up the board a little bit faster in terms of like getting your game-ending push because you can kill a dude and break 2 shields. Uh, so you're less vulnerable to a clapback. Finally, 3 Haven. Haven good. I don't think I need to say more than that. Haven good. Next, we'll go to the removal package, because this is a control deck, so that's right down here. We got 3 Root Trap, 3 Terror Pit. Take out big things. This is primarily for the really greedy control matchups where everyone's just got a butt ton of big heavy things. This gets rid of them. Tendril Grasp. This is a tech, I assume, for the rush matchup. We've got a lot of targets that are 3 or less that we'd love to ramp. We've got 3, 6, 9, 9 and 4 is 13. So we got 13 things we can potentially hit off of Tendril Grasp to ramp us if they're still on board. And most of these things we have no problem sending to mana in the first place because they're just kind of stopgaps to get us to late turns. Meanwhile, our opponents who are trying to hit real aggro curves on 1 through 3, they would be very unhappy to see this thing come up in shields. This is a very dangerous card. The fact that it was allowed to be printed is kind of scary, but I mean, like we've talked about in the past, level-based removal is a lot scarier than power-based removal. So what are you gonna do? Finally, 3 Stormspark Blasts, or I'm sorry, not finally, but 3 Stormspark Blasts. I like this a lot more than Arbiter because there's no benefit to Arbiter here. We don't need more bodies on board. We've already got a ton of blockers. We don't need to fight for board in that regard. I would rather have the Stormspark and Stormspark's a lot better in the mirror match because you can tap your opponent's havens. You can tap your opponent's blockers and clean up their board, and once you have board control, you're just kind of in a dominant position the entire game, especially in the late game once you've finished off kind of ramping to your Haven turns. So yeah, Stormspark is significantly better. I'm 100% happy with this over Arbiter in this list. Next, 2 Bone Blades. This is really good in removal. I would almost like to see some of the blockers cut for a 3rd copy of Bone Blades, but at this point we're getting a little bit heavy on removal, so I'm not against 2. And then finally, in terms of removal, we got 3 Piercing. Piercing is just a nutty great removal card. I might like to see one of these Piercings turn into a Bone Blades in the future, just because we already are at 20 multi-civ cards, which is a lot for this kind of deck. We do run some ramp, so it's possible that we don't get put in a bad position with mana, but there's just a lot of multi-civ cards here, so... Finally, we've got our rampant kind of utility package that's down here. Reap and Sow, draw and ramp feels really good. Sprout, when in doubt, cast a Sprout, in the words of Ryan Miller, original game director of Kaijudo. More ramp helps you hit this stride early, especially in the mirror. When it's hit in shields, typically you almost don't want to play it from shields, but it can get you that 1 turn ahead. So it depends. Crystal Memory. I'm kind of sad this is a one-of. Maybe we were constrained by just like number of copies because Crystal Memory was kind of short printed back in the day. But this card is so important, especially with a higher deck count. I would rather just play less cards full stop and keep it to 1 or 2 memories. But if the deck is already this big, I would rather just play 3. It's that important. And I would definitely rather play it over Bottle, because I hate this card. I think it's unfun and unfair, and it rewards you for building really greedy decks. And let me tell you, this deck is greedy. This is a greedy control deck that can go real late. Especially with all of the removal and all the utility we have with Saracons and Twilight Archons and all sorts of nutty stuff. So, Bottle good? So good? Actually, no. Bottle bad. Bottle bad for the health of the game. It does really good things sometimes, but there are a lot of incredible bottle targets in this deck, so it makes sense that it's in here. I just hate the card. Squillace Scourge. This is, again, really for the control matchup. Once you have a dominating board state and you can attack and your opponent can't, and you can block and your opponent can't, and you both dump your hands, but you get to choose when it's best for you to dump your hand and your opponent doesn't, it's a wonderful card. It is a great card, almost unfairly so. Like, there's really just very little counterplay for Squillace. And then finally, 3 Keeper of Laws. Makes your opponent feel bad for playing spells and it's hexproof. So lets you do a lot more. Honestly, I don't think Laws does that much in this deck outside of the mirror match. And there's a notable omission here. There's no Mesmerize in this deck. So I would honestly rather see these Laws turned into Mesmerize. like I said, there's a couple of things I'd tune up in this deck. There's a couple tech cards that are a little bit too cute in here, um, and I think this is too overtuned for just a wide range of decks. Uh, like this is a very greedy control deck, so it's really tuned for the control matchup for a tournament or a local scene or just playing around with your friends when you expect to see a lot more control. So a more aggressive deck, especially with how inconsistent this deck is at 54 cards, a more aggressive aggro kind of list will probably run this down if it's played correctly and draws semi decently. Um, but I digress. So, uh, with that, I'm going to call it there. Uh, this has been Alpha 5, also known as Stents from the Rangers Dojo, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.